Hey, welcome. This is Lee Waller, and I am working in Unreal Engine 5.7.1 in the motion design tools. I'm going to take a look at how I built this animation here. This focuses mostly on using a mesh cloner, what a mesh cloner is and how we can use it to create these particles and this text. And to create the background, I use a spline actor along with a 2D shape, the rectangle, and adding in the modifier to use that spline actor. So we'll take a look at that also. I'm going to go ahead and jump in. We're going to start with the text. And so I'm going to go over here to actors, and I'm going to go to the text actor, double click on it. It'll drop that text in. And of course, over here in our details panel, we can start working with that text. I'm going to go ahead and type in Unreal right here. And you can type that in all caps, or you can enforce uppercase right there. A new feature that they've come out with in 5.7 is the fact that they have the font size here. And I'm going to go ahead and increase this font size up to 150. I'm going to change the font out. You can choose whichever font you want to work with. This works better with a very bold font. For this one, I'm going to use Bauhaus 93 right there. And now I'm going to jump down here, make a few more adjustments. I'm going to align this horizontally and vertically. And I want to add some geometry to it. Let's extrude this. I'm going to go ahead and extrude this by about 10 centimeters right there. And just to show you that, I'll go back up here and rotate this real quick. And so you can see that's extruded. And for this to work with the mesh cloner, it's going to need to be a mesh. So we're going to need to convert this text to a mesh. I'm going to drop down here in the details panel again for that text actor, and you'll see it right here under utilities, convert to static mesh. Let's just click that. We will need to place that somewhere. I've already added in a folder called My Meshes. All you need to do is right there on content, just right click, add new folder, and then you can name that just so you know where those are. I'm going to select that and hit OK. So now we have the original text that we're left with and then the static mesh. I'm going to label both of these real quick. For the text actor, I am going to label that text _ Unreal. And then for the static mesh, I'm going to label that mesh _ Unreal. Now at this point, we really don't need the 3D text anymore. I am just going to hide it for right now, just in case we want to come back and make any adjustments. If we do make adjustments, we will need to convert that again to a static mesh. So it's best to kind of go ahead and make all your decisions up front here. But again, you always have the option to come back and fix that. For the cloner to work the way we want it to with this static mesh, we're going to need to do a few things to it. So with it selected, I'm going to go over here and jump out of motion design mode, and I'm going to go into modeling mode. Two things we're going to need to do. We'll go into the transform tab right here. And this isn't absolutely critical, but I'm going to go ahead and center up that pivot point and hit accept right there. And now the part that we really need to do is go down here to the mesh tab, and we're going to need to remesh this. Click on remesh, and you'll see what it does. It creates all of these triangles, setting up these different points here. And that's going to tell the cloner where to put the clones. I'm going to hit accept right there. And now I'm going to center this up. Make sure I'm back with that mesh right there. Go up to the top and then just hit reset on the location. And our text is in the center where we want it. I'm going to go back over here now to motion design mode. Now that we have our mesh text set up, we're ready to add in the cloner. So right here on cloners, I'm going to go here to the mesh cloner, double click on it. It adds that cloner in. You'll see the cloner right here in the outliner. We're going to use this default clone, but at this point, it's best for us to go ahead and add the material to it that we want. I'm going to select it, and then I'm going to go over here to Material Designer and open it up. And from here, we'll make the material for it. I'm just going to go with the PBR and hit continue. Now the material, you can make this based on whatever color scheme you're working with, But for the one that I've created, I'm going to go here to the base color. I'm going to select and make this a solid color. Open up the color picker on that. And I have a hexadecimal there for this. I'm going to go ahead and paste that in, and that is 2C7070FF. I'm going to hit OK on that. Then I'm going to make changes to the roughness and metallic. I'm going to change both of these to a solid color and then make that solid color white. That just helps me to adjust those properties in the channels. I'll show you that in just a moment. So now that we've set up the base color, the roughness, and the metallic, I'm going to go to channels right here, and I'm going to adjust the roughness and the metallic. I'm going to set both of those to 0.5. Let's save this material now. Click right there, save as new material. I'm going to set up a folder for this. I'm going to do MD_text material, and we'll hit save on that. I'm going to close that up, and just to make sure, even though the clone has changed colors and it has accepted the material, it's not the saved material that I've assigned to it. So I'm going to go right here, click, and then search for that MD_, and make sure it is that. So if I go back in and make any changes to it, it'll be the correct material. A few more adjustments to this. We're going to bring this down in size quite a bit. So with it selected, go to scale, make sure that's locked, and I'm going to set that to 0.03. So at this point, we have our cloner, we have the clone that we want to use. Now we need to wrap it around this mesh. So back in the cloner, we'll drop down here and go to layout. You'll see that it is set up for the mesh cloner. We're going to need to sample that actor. And so we'll select it right here. And you can see that we're starting to wrap these clones around it. We'll leave it on a static mesh right here, and then we're going to bring this count way up. Let's set that to 10,000. And the last adjustment for this, I'm going to change this from vertices to triangles. You can choose whichever one there you want to use. This was just the look that I wanted for this. So that we can see this a little bit better now, and we don't need this at this point. We do need it in there for the cloner, but we don't need to see it anymore. I'm just going to turn that off and deselect. Now we can see that that default clone, which is a rectangle, it is now populating this mesh that we've wrapped it around. If you want to fill in some of these gaps a little bit more, you can increase that count there. Or if you want less, you can decrease that. Next, we'll create the animation to animate this in. We will do that on the cloner. So with it selected, let's move on down past the layout. And you have these two options here, either range or step. We're going to use the step option, so we'll need to enable that. You'll see immediately how simple this is. You can go to position and then just start moving that. In whatever direction you move that in, the cloner moves and those particles sweep with it. We will need to animate this position here on step, and then we'll also need to animate the same position, whichever one we choose, on the actual cloner to complete the animation. Before I set any keyframes, I'm going to come over here to my sequencer, make a couple of changes. I'm going to set the frame rate to 30 frames real quick. And then also right here, I'm going to click on the playback options, and I'm going to set a little more time on our sequencer. I'm going to add up that to 300 frames, which is 10 seconds. And so now we have 10 seconds in our animation. For right now, I'll start this animation here at the beginning. And so I'm going to go over here to position, and I'm going to go ahead and sweep this off to the side. I'm going to go ahead and just set that to a -5 for right now. This number is going to be helpful in adjusting how these particles sweep in, and we'll look at that in just a minute. I'll go ahead and set it to -5 for right now and set that first keyframe. And you can see that we still have some particles. That's why we're going to need to actually move the cloner itself. So again, on that Y-axis up here under the transform controls for the location, I'm going to go ahead and push that off to the same side until we get all of the particles off screen right there. And I'll set a keyframe for that. We can adjust the timing on this later, but for right now, I'm going to go ahead and set this to 2 seconds. And then we can just set both of these back to 0. Make sure we click that keyframe right there. And then on our step position on the Y right there, we'll set that to 0 and make sure that we set that keyframe. Now we can go back and take a look at our animation. To add to the dynamics of the whole animation, I did animate the particles, and we're going to use an effector to do that. With the cloner selected, we'll drop down and you'll see right here under Effector says Create Linked Effector. We'll click that, and it has added this effector in. You'll see it right there. It is selected, so that's what we've jumped to, and that's what we're looking at. You'll see the shape of that effector right now is a sphere, and I'm going to change that to unbound, so it doesn't matter what that shape is. We know that the whole text is wrapped in that effector, so the whole text will be affected by it. Under Mode, I'm going to go from Offset. I'm going to drop down to Procedural, and I'm going to leave it on that curl noise. That's just a noise that we don't see, but the effector follows, and you'll see how it's going to move through the text. And we're going to use rotation. I'm going to rotate each of these clones based on this noise, and then a few adjustments down here. For the rotation strength, I'm going to set all of those to 45, and you can experiment with these and see what you like. I'm going to drop down to pan, and I'm going to bring this up to 50 on each of those. And then on the frequency, I'm going to set that to 2. So you can see now already that we have that noise sweeping through. And as that noise sweeps through, it's rotating those particles. So if you want a greater rotation, you can adjust that here, less or more on that. And the frequency and how much between the pan and the frequency there, you can increase that. I'm going to go ahead and set that up to 5. And so we get a bit more moving through that. So let's take a look at what we've got. Jump back to the beginning and hit the space bar. It moves in, and I'll hold that for a second and then we'll animate it out. So I'll jump right here to 90 frames. And I'm just going to set keyframes so that it's the same position on both of them. Just go ahead and set 2 keyframes right there. And then I'll animate this out just a little bit more quickly. Go to about 120. And we'll need to animate the position again on the cloner and the step position of the cloner. So with the cloner selected, let me go down to the step first. And I'm going to animate this out to the other side. So on position there, start dragging that out. I'll go ahead and just set that to 2, set that keyframe, and then we know how much we need to animate this on the location. And so we can just go ahead and drag that on out about right there and make sure we hit that keyframe also. So we have our first text animated in and out. And you can adjust the timing there. I might actually speed this animation in a little bit. I'm just going to select all of those keyframes and probably adjust them about 15 frames there. Be a little bit quicker. I'm going to clean things up a little bit and select, I'm going to close the cloner up, label it cloner _ Unreal so I know what each of these work with, and then the effector also Effector _ Unreal. And now I'm going to wrap all of these up, select all of them, and I'm going to use a null object to wrap them up in, and we'll just label that Unreal. And let's double check that animation just to make sure. Yep, just slightly messed things up by dropping it in that null object. And what we need to do is just make sure that the null is selected and then just reset the location and everything should be fine. Deselect, I'm just clicking down here to deselect everything. Then I'll drop down here and we'll take a look at it. So for the other text, all we need to do is repeat that process. So this time I'll do it a little bit more quickly without the explanation. So let me make sure I'm in motion design mode. I'll go to my text actors here. I'm going to double click on the text actor. That drops in, and I'm going to change this word to motion. and enforce the uppercase there. Change this again to Bauhaus 93. Bring up my font size to 150 and then drop down, and I'm going to center this, align it, and then we'll go into the geometry, set that to 10 centimeters on the extrude. And now we can convert this to a mesh. So I'm going to drop all the way down here to utilities, convert to static mesh. We'll put that right there in my meshes and hit OK. There is that new text layer. So here's our original text layer that we no longer need. And again, I'll just label this to keep up with everything, underscore motion. And now we'll label this mesh. I'll go ahead and hide the original text there. We don't need it any longer. We need to make a few adjustments to our mesh. So with it selected, we'll go back over here and take a look at modeling mode. And we can do this in either order. I'm going to hit mesh right there and go ahead and remesh that. Again, there's all of our triangles that those particles are going to line up with. We'll hit accept on that. And then I want to just go ahead and we'll go into transform and edit the pivot. Again, the pivot is just that point right there. And I want it to be center. So hit edit pivot. I'm going to hit the center button right there and it moves it. Now that pivot points there to the center and I'll hit accept. Let's change back now to motion design mode. And with that selected, I'm going to make sure that we center that up and just reset the location there. Now we can add in our cloner. We'll go to cloners and then again, the mesh cloner, double click on it. It drops that in there. There's that new cloner. I'll go ahead and label it real quick, trying to keep up with that. Underscore motion. We have our default clone in there. I'll select it and we're going to bring that size down. Actually, I'll go ahead and add in that material real quick. We'll go search for it, MD underscore, and select that. And again, you can change the color of that, do whatever you want to. If each text you want to be a different color, feel free to do whatever your design calls for. Now we'll drop this size down. Again, going to select that 0.03. And so we have our cloner. We have the clones set up. Now we just need to tell the cloner to use this mesh right here. So with the cloner selected, we'll drop down here to layout, mesh, and then we'll select that second mesh. And there it is, mesh underscore motion. That's the one we want. Select it. We see some of the clones starting to conform to it. We'll bring this count up to 10,000. And then I'm going to change this from vertices to triangles. I'm going to go ahead and bring that up to 15,000. And then we can hide now this mesh. And there's our second text. To animate this, again, we have the two properties in the cloner that we'll use. I'm going to set this one to animate coming in from behind the camera. And so let's go down here. And again, on our step, we'll need to enable that. And then on the position here on the X value, we'll drag that to the negative number. And I'll go ahead and set that to -2. We'll start at that point. Let's see where we want this. I'll go ahead and set this to 105 for right now, but we'll probably come back and adjust the timing. And so with the timeline indicator right there on position set to -2, I'm going to set that first keyframe. And then we'll do the same on the location up here. Bring this back so that we no longer see any of the particles. And then we can hit that keyframe. And I think we did 1.5 seconds on that. So that'd be around 150. And then I'll just set this back to 0. Set that keyframe, drop down, and set that to 0 now. And we'll set that keyframe. So we can take a look at that animation. That's animating out, and then these are animating in. And again, you can play with, I'm going to go ahead and set these two to be linear so that they're not easing in on that initial start motion. And I'll go ahead, I'm going to drag this, let's see. So probably I'll try 90 and see if that works. May want to speed it up a little bit more, but I'll go ahead and just move that to start right there. So as these are moving out, the others will start moving in. And if you want to adjust that a little bit more, let's see, I'll just go ahead and maybe knock another 15 frames off of it to just kind of keep it in our 30 frames. And let's see. And all of that, again, you can be adjusted however you want it. With that, I'm going to go ahead now and set our 1 second pause right there. Set a keyframe on both of those. And now for our out, I'll go to 180 and choose a different direction this time to animate that out. I'll animate these going out to the top. So I'm going to go right here and set this Z position to 0.2 and then set that keyframe. And let's take a look at that animation. Now that we've got that animation completed, we can add in that effector to rotate these particles. Again, I'm going to drop down. Let me make sure that I have my cloner selected there. And I'm going to drop down to create linked effector right there. Add that in. Again, just make these adjustments real quick. We'll change that to unbound and then from offset to procedural. And then we'll make adjustments on the rotation and set our pan up and then also our frequency. I have wrapped all of that up into a null object. And so I'm going to add that effector into that null object right there. So I have all of that organized together. Since I've been through 2 of these, I'm just going to go ahead and set up the 3rd piece of text. It's the same process. And again, just adjust your timing to whatever you prefer there. I'll be back after I've done that and we'll take a look at creating the background. So I've animated that 3rd text and I've wrapped it all up right there, just like we did the other 2. I've added some time here at the beginning for the animation that we're about to create for the background. Let's take a look at everything right now. All right, now let's take a look at creating this background. This is kind of one of those processes also that's very repetitive. The first thing that I'm going to do is create a spline with an arc in it. So I'm going to need a spline actor. So I'm going to go here to actors, click on that. You'll see the spline actor. I'm going to double click on it and it drops that in. And we're going to need to add an arc to this because right now it's just 2 points. It's just a straight line. I'm going to go right here to this second point and click on it. Make sure that I have that second point selected. Right click on it and you'll see this dropout menu. I'm going to go to the spline generation panel. Click on it. This panel opens up and we'll add an arc. The 4 points will work. I'm going to increase the radius. This is kind of the size of the arc. It is going to be a 90-degree arc. And I'm going to bring this up to 300 on the radius. And that'll do it for right now. So I'm going to close this out. It's hard to see this, so we're going to need to jump into a different view. So right up here on this 4 panels right here, I'm going to click on it and I'm going to be looking for the top-down view. Here's the top. I'm going to select it so that it's full screen. And then I'm going to zoom out till I find my arc and we'll just navigate around. There is the arc. And you'll see it starts here, arcs and heads in this direction. I have this point and we'll extend it out. I need to select my translate tool right here. And that way we can get our gizmo right there and we can move that point out. We may need to come back and adjust it a little bit more. And we will need to add one more point to this side of the arc. So I'm going to right click on it and you'll see this duplicate spline point. Click it. Doesn't look like anything happened, but we have duplicated that spline point and we can drag it out. So now we have this spline that our 2D shape is going to follow, and that will help us create our background. Again, just to kind of be on the safe side, we'll probably need to adjust these in just a minute. That'll help with the timing. But now that we've got that built, I'm going to jump back into, we'll go to our 4 panels, and then we'll go back to our main panel right here. So let's add that shape in right under here. right up here at 2D shapes, we'll click on it and just double click on the rectangle. It adds in a rectangle, and we're going to need to add a modifier to this. So with it selected right there, I don't have my operator stack open, so I'm going to go over here to the far left side. You'll see this button. Click on it, and there's our operator stack right there. We'll go to Add Modifiers, and we'll drop down here, and we're going to look for Spline Sweep right there. We'll add that in. Now that's been added to this shape layer. Now we need to tell it what spline to follow, which there's only one. Here's that modifier that we just added. Let me make a little more room for it so we can see all of the properties for it. So we will select the spline. Again, this is applied to that shape. And we're going to go, and there's the only spline actor we have. You'll see things change immediately. Just to smooth this out a little bit more, I'm going to go ahead and bring this up to 128 steps. And we'll come back to this in just a minute to animate. But let's go ahead and get this in position now. So back to our motion design outliner, make sure that rectangle is selected, and we're going to need to go to our rotation properties here. Now, this might be a little different based on the way that your spline dropped in. So experiment with the rotation. Now on mine, it's going to go 90 degrees here on the pitch, and you'll see there is our arc, and then also a negative 90 on the yaw, and that has the spline coming down and then moving towards us, arcing right there, and then moving towards us. I'm going to change the position of this so that we can see it a little bit better. On location X right there, I'm going to set that to 300. That's going to push it back away from us. And then I'm also going to drop it down to a negative 300. And so you can see that. Now, I do know that, and I'm just going to rotate this back so we can see it real quick. This is much thicker than it needs to be, so, and it's not quite as wide as I need it. So I'm going to go to the mesh size down here, and we'll set this to, make sure that is set to free. And then I'm just going to set this to 2. That just thins it out right there. And then I'll open this up to 100 centimeters on it. And you can experiment with the size of this, especially on the width, to whatever your preference is for your animation. Now I'm going to jump back up here and rotate this back to that negative 90. I just wanted you to see how that's shaping up. Let me hide these tools right here so we can see this better. I know this is pretty detailed, but I want to show you how this spline affects this shape, because it is also going to affect the timing of the animation. We have these points, and I'm going to jump out of this, and let me go to the default viewport. And let me see if I can navigate this thing around so we can see this a little bit better. There we go. That's a lot better. That'll help us see both of them. And let me back out a little bit more. All right. So this point and this point are going to be adjusting the top and the bottom of this. And that also affects the timing of the animation from the start point to the end point. And so if you don't have enough of it, you can go to these 2 end points and either stretch them out. And I know we can't see that right now, or we can, if you need to, you can shrink it. And so you can see there, this is the top of it. And I'm going to just bring that back. And then this is the bottom of it. And we'll bring that back a little bit more till we see it. Just, there we go. I'm going to bring that back. Now let me go back to my camera view. And yes, I do need to adjust the top and the bottom. So I do have view of the bottom right there. So I'll bring that just in slightly so that I can see the spline a little bit better. I am going to select it, and I'm going to bring this down in position a little bit just so I can see these points, and maybe over a little bit so I can just adjust this so I can get it in view. There we go. So now I can see it from our main camera, and then also adjust these points so I can get it right where I want it. And so you can see there I am at the bottom. We'll set that right there. Again, this has to do with adjusting the timing also. Now that we've got that a little bit better, I'm going to hide that spline. We don't need to see it any longer. And now I'm going to go into the rectangle and go back to my operator stack. And here's how we're going to animate this in. Using this progress start, I'll go ahead and start adjusting that. You can see it's backing that up, and we'll go to the end. And that's what I was trying to get, is to make sure that when we started moving this slider right here, we were right at the bottom of the screen. And so that way we don't have a lot of excess down here that's going to take a little bit of time for that to progress. And then also up there at the top, once we just get outside of screen there, we don't have much more left on that. So that helps the timing. So to animate this, let me go ahead and set this to 1 on the progress start. Make sure that I'm in my sequencer here at the very beginning. That's where we'll start this. And we'll need to set a keyframe right here. And I'll do about 30 on this, because we're going to stagger these, and then drop this progress start down and then hit the keyframe on that. And now we've created that animation. Let's go back to the very beginning. Just take a look at it real quick. And you can adjust the timing on that. I'm going to create the other 4 sections that we're going to animate in, and then we'll stagger those. I will go ahead and label this center, and I will duplicate it, select it, Control D, and then on the position for it, let me bring this up. I'll slide this one over, and you can see that it is not bringing over correctly. Let me just set that to 100 right there. And it's not bringing over the operator or the modifier correctly. We will need to go into each one of the bands and delete that spline sweep, then just jump back into the modifiers, add that spline sweep in. We can bring this back up to 128 bands, and then we will select that spline actor. And so we have our second band. It did add in when we duplicated it into the sequencer, so it's red there, easy to find. Just delete that. We can go back in and animate the second one here in just a moment. I'm going to go ahead and set up some materials for this. I'll go back to my center and drop down here. I'm going to change this from simple material designer. It'll open that up. Just going to continue with a PBR right there. So on this, for the base color, we'll drop in there and we'll change this to a solid color. And I have a hexadecimal for that one. And I'm going to paste that hexadecimal in. That is F2BF5EFF. F2BF5EFF. And I'm going to hit OK on that. And I want to make adjustments on the roughness and metallic. So again, I'm going to set both of these to white. And then once that's set, we'll go into channels and make adjustments. I'm going to leave the roughness at 1 and drop this metallic down to 0. We can now go up here to save it. To make sure that that is the material that's on there, again, I'm going to go over here and go to Asset, and then just search that real quick, MD underscore, and there it is. With that material set up, I'm going to go into the content drawer and into that materials folder. I'm going to duplicate that, just grab it, move it over, let go of it, and I'm going to make a copy right here of it. Just want to select it, hit Control S, and I'm going to make the material for the other bands that we need. So to edit this, I'm going to grab this one. I'm going to drag it to the second band right there, drop it on there, and then we'll go make sure that that is selected, and I'll label this right underscore 01. And with that selected, we'll drop down here and go into Edit with Material Designer. And now we can change the color of it. That way we don't have to do quite as much work. We'll go to the base color. And I have a hexadecimal for that one. Paste that in there, and that's D97236FF. D97236FF. And hit OK on it. And then we can update that, hit save, and close that out. And then we'll add in our third bar real quick. So we'll go right here to right, duplicate it, Control D. And just like we had to with the other one, let me select it and then move it over 200 centimeters right there. And with that one selected, we'll go back over here to the modifiers in the operator stack and delete those because we're going to need to add that back in. Add modifiers, spline sweep, and we will select that spline actor again, and we can increase that up to 128. And so we have these 3 in, and then we'll do 2 more for the other side. I want to create that third material, so I'm going to go back into the content drawer. We'll grab this second material right there and just pull it to the side, copy here, and I'm going to select it and hit Control S to save it, and then I'm going to apply it right there. And let's just make sure. We'll go to the asset right here and then go into MD underscore, and we'll go to that one, make sure it's the one that's selected. Then we'll edit it from right here, and we can change that color, go to the base color. And just like before, I have a hexadecimal for this one. Let me copy it. We'll go in and paste that. And that is 8C3730FF. I'll hit OK. I'm going to hit save right there. I'm not sure that that always saves it, so let me go back into the content drawer. Doesn't look like it does, but we'll save it right there. So now we have our 3 colors there, and we'll just duplicate for these other 2 and slide them over to the other side. So I'll select this one right here first, go into the outliner and Control D to duplicate it. That's it right there. So I'm going to label this left underscore 01. And then in our position here, I'll set that to a -100. It's over there. And just like before, we'll need to go back into the operator stack, delete all of that, and then add a new one in. Add that spline actor, bring this up to 128. And we have it. And then we'll do this process one more time. Grab that one right there and duplicate it and label it left 2. And then move that one over to a -200. Back to the operator stack, delete everything, and then add it back in. And now we're set to animate the rest of these. I'll animate one more, and then I'll jump out and animate the rest of them and come back. All right, so I want to make sure that my timeline indicator is there at the beginning. That first one, that center one there, has been animated. We'll do the same thing. Let me go here to the right 01. Let me go into the operator stack. That's where we need to be. And then we'll do the progress start right there. Bring that all the way up to 1. Set a keyframe for it. Jump to about 30 frames right there on the animation. And then bring this progress start down. Set that keyframe, and we've got that animated. So I'm going to go through and do the rest of them like that real quick, and I'll come back. So I've built those other 5 out and animated them. And so we'll take a look right there. There's the animation with everything else. Before I go into lighting, I want to add in a background wall here. And I'll do that with a rectangle. Just double click on the rectangle, add that in. So I'll push that back behind all of our bands right there. And let's see. Okay, so somewhere around 700, 710. I'll leave it right there. And then I'm going to bring that up in the mesh size. Make sure that's set to free. And let's just see if 2000 by 2000. Nope, we'll need to make that a little bit larger. Definitely see 3000 right there. So there we have that back wall. And I'm going to apply this center material to it. Let me go into my content drawer there, and I'll just grab that material and drag it and drop it on there. As I was working through this, things didn't seem to be lining up quite right. I had a mistake on our background and on these 5 bands. So I went in there, and on the position for the location there, I set all of those to 0. On the bands, on the 5 bands, again, on the X value, set all of those to 0. That brought them forward. And then also on our background right there, I set that right behind them. And so that ended up being around 440. So you can adjust that. And so you can see there, So just after I pass by them there, right there, somewhere in that area, I set that up. Before we move on, I'm going to jump in here and just stagger the animation on this background real quick. I'm going to grab left 1 and bring it maybe back about 5 frames. Do that with right 1 also. And you can work this out however you want to. And then bring maybe back the left 2, about 10 frames. We can adjust this more. Let's see, right 2, about 10 frames. Let's see how that animates in now. Okay, that looks really good. Now I'm going to add some lighting into this. We got some weird shadows going on and everything. We'll deal with that with our lighting. The first light that I want to add in, let me go over here, lights and spotlight. Double click on the spotlight, drop that in, and make some adjustments to it. On location, I'm going to adjust the X value 55, push it in just a little bit, and then on the Z value there, we'll set that to 355. We're going to bring that up. And on the rotation here, I'm going to set that to -45. Then drop down. We'll take a look at intensity. Let's try for right now 65 on the intensity for that. We'll move on down, and I'm going to open up the inner cone on this to about 33, and then the outer cone to 67. And on the source radius right there, I'll set that to 350. And with that set up, I'm going to go up here now into our outliner, and I'm actually going to turn off the directional light and the skylight. Not going to use those. And so we are eliminating a lot of the shadows, but our text is in the dark. So we'll add in a light for the text. And on that, we'll use a Rect light. So I'm going to double click on the Rect light. And in the location for it, we'll just start scrubbing and bring that out. Let's try maybe -90 on that. So that's out in front of the text. Let's open that up a good bit. So on the source width right there, let's open that up to maybe 530. We'll check that on the other text in just a minute. And then on the height, let's set that to 150. Let's jump back and make sure that we're getting all of the text. Okay, yeah, so we'll need to open that up a little bit more. I think that's our longest. So let's open that up. Yeah, there we go. Get all of that in there. And we may come back and play with the intensity a little bit, but we'll go with that for right now. So now let's jump back and take a look at this. So taking a look at this, I'm not real happy with this. I'm getting a lot of shadows, and it is from this Rect light. So I'm going to go in there and just tell it to not cast shadows. So with that Rect light selected, I've just searched it right here in the bar, started typing in shadow, and we have this under the light properties for that Rect light, cast shadows. We're going to turn those off, and that just cleans up that background quite a bit. Not so as dark, and I like that a lot better. Now, I do have also one more light we'll play with and add in. So when all of these particles are coming in, they're in the dark. So again, I'm going to go back in and add in another Rect light and bring that out. Now that I'm right here in this position, I'll bring that out a good bit and see what we can do with it. If we can light up some of these particles as they come in. So let's start dragging that back this way. And that looks really good. And at this distance, that shouldn't be affecting the rest of the animation much. So it'll definitely help on lighting up these particles. So let's take a look at the animation now. All right, that's looking really good. Hey, I hope this has been helpful. For more on motion media design in Unreal and other digital content creation, hit the like and subscribe button and check out my other tutorials.